Welcome back, and in stage 4 of this demo series we're going to begin the process of integrating both of these environments, so the AWS environment on the left and the on-premises environment on the right. And the first stage of this integration is to prepare both of the directories for a two-way forest trust. So we need to perform a number of preparation steps and then implement the actual two-way forest trust. And we're going to do all of that in this stage of the demo lesson. So by the end of this lesson, we're going to have this architecture where the Active Directory installation within the AWS environment has a two-way forest trust with the one on the on-premises environment. And this will mean that users of the on-premises environment can be authenticated at the AWS side, and users in the AWS side can be authenticated by the domain on the on-premises side. It also means that resources in one domain can be used by the other as long as we set the relevant permissions. So this is the foundation step that's required to integrate these two environments, and we're going to do that in this stage of the demo. So let's move over to the console and get started. Now there are two things that we need to do at both sides of this environment in order to allow the two-way forest trust. We need to make sure that the Kerberos pre-authentication settings are correct on each domain, and then we need to create a conditional DNS forwarder so that both sides are able to resolve the infrastructure at the other. So that's a conditional forwarder running on the on-premises side, pointing at the AWS side, and then a conditional forwarder at the AWS side, pointing at the on-premises side. And once that's done, we'll be able to configure the two-way forest trust. So to start this process, we need to be connected to the on-premises environment. We're going to be doing all of the administration work for the on-premises side from the client machine, so the client EC2 instance. Now you should still have a connection open to this via the on-premises Jumpbox. If you don't, there are instructions to connect again inside this stage's instructions attached to this lesson. You need to connect first to the on-premises Jumpbox and then through to the client machine. Once you're connected, or if you still are connected, then go ahead and click on the Windows symbol at the bottom and then go into Administrative Tools and then load Active Directory Users and Computers. Now you can tell you're in the right place if the Active Directory domain shows ad.animalsforlife.org, because this is the on-premises domain. Now first we need to check the Kerberos pre-authentication settings. Now the easiest way to do that is to open up the users folder on the on-premises domain, pick one particular user, we'll use admin, right click and go to properties. Click on the Accounts tab and then scroll down, look for the box that says Do Not Require Kerberos Pre-Authentication and make sure that is not checked. And that confirms to us the domain is in the desired state. And that's the default state for Active Directory domains, so we're good to continue. We don't need to edit any other preferences for this domain. Now that we know the domain's in a good position, now we need to create the conditional forwarder. So this is the conditional forwarder at the on-premises side that points at the AWS side. Now to do that, click on the Windows logo and type DNS. It should find the DNS application. If it does, go ahead and click on it to open. Now we need to edit the DNS for the on-premises domain. So we're going to select the following computer rather than this computer. And then we're going to type one of the domain controllers, and we're going to use DC1, which is domain controller 1 of the on-premises environment. So type DC1 and then click on OK. And that will connect us to DC1. We'll be able to manage the DNS of this domain controller. So double click on DC1 and then expand it, and then select Conditional Forwarders, click on Action, and then New Conditional Forwarder. Now the conditional forwarder is going to be for the AWS implementation of Active Directory. So the DNS domain will be aws.animalsforlife.org, and then we're going to need the IP addresses of the DNS servers at the AWS side. Now to get those, move back to the AWS console, go to Directory Service, and open up this instance of Directory Service. You might need to click on refresh, but what we're looking for are the DNS addresses. There should be two. So go ahead and copy the first one into your clipboard, move back to the on-premises environment, and then paste that IP address into this box. We'll need to do that a second time for the other IP address. So move back to the AWS console, copy the second DNS address into your clipboard, and then we'll paste that in again into this conditional forwarder box. So now we should have two IP addresses set up for this conditional forwarder. And don't worry if you see an unknown error inside the validated column. That's okay. Now we want this conditional forwarder to be replicated across all directory controllers in this domain. And so we'll tick the box to store this conditional forwarder in Active Directory and replicate it. And then we'll click in the drop down and change it from all DNS servers in this forest to all DNS servers in this domain. And once you've done that, go ahead and click on OK. So that's created the conditional forwarder for aws.animalsforlife.org, which is the AWS side Active Directory. And that means that the on-premise side of the Active Directory relationship will be able to communicate with the AWS side. So that's the first stage of the on-premises configuration. Next, we need to move back to the AWS console. At this point, click on Services, type VPC, right-click and open in a new tab. Now the directory service Active Directory is secured using a security group, and we need to edit that security group. So once you're in the VPC console, on the left, look for Security and then Security Groups, and then just scroll to the right and expand the description field, and we're looking for the one that says AWS created security group for, and then the ID of the directory service. Now just confirm that this is the same. So on the Directory Services tab, you'll see an ID, and just make sure that that matches this security group, and it should. Once you've done that, select the security group. We need to go to outbound rules, and by default this security group only allows outgoing communications to this destination, which is this security group, and we need to add a less restrictive outgoing rule. So click on Edit Outbound Rules. We're going to add a rule. Select the drop down, click on All Traffic, and at this point you'd enter the CIDR range of whatever the on-premises network or the other network that you're configuring this relationship for is using. Now you should be using the 192.168.8 subnet for your on-premises side if you used the defaults for the CloudFormation template, but just to avoid any errors at this point, we're going to use the non-restrictive CIDR block, so 0.0.0.0/0. Now, because this process uses authentication, this isn't opening up any security issues, but in production usage, you would use something a lot more specific. But for this demo, select 0.0.0.0/0. And once you've done that, go ahead and save those rules. And this means that the directory service will now be able to communicate with our domain controllers running on premises. Now we also need to check that the Kerberos pre-authentication settings are also correct at the AWS side. So to do that, move across to the AWS Jumpbox. You should still have that open. It's the one that says aws.animalsforlife.org. Go ahead and expand A4L AWS, and then inside there, Users. Select the admin user, right-click, Properties, go to Account. Again, scroll down and we're looking for Do Not Require Kerberos Pre-Authentication. That should not be checked, and that means everything's good. Now the next step is to actually create the two-way forest trust, and the first step of doing that is to configure the on-premises side of the relationship. Now to configure the on-premises side, we need to connect first to the on-premises Jumpbox. From the on-premises Jumpbox, connect into the client instance, and if you haven't closed this down from an earlier step, you should still be connected. Once we're on the client instance, click on the Start button, go to Windows Administrative Tools, and this time we need to open Active Directory Domains and Trusts. Once you're there, you should see ad.animalsforlife.org, so select that, right-click, and go to Properties. Then select the Trusts tab, and we're going to create a new trust. So click on New Trust, then Next. Now the trust relationship is between ad.animalsforlife.org, which is the on-premises side, and the other side is aws.animalsforlife.org, which is the AWS side. So go ahead and type aws.animalsforlife.org, click on Next, select Forest Trust. Now, the differences between an external trust and a forest trust are beyond the scope of this demo lesson. That's a very specific Active Directory topic, but we're going to select a forest trust. So select that, click on Next. It's going to be a two-way trust so that users in both domains are trusted by the other side. You've also got one-way incoming and one-way outgoing when you want to create a trust in only one direction, but we want to do both. So select two-way. Click on Next. Now you can create the trust at both sides at the same time if you have permissions, but it's far easier for this demonstration if we use this domain only. So we'll create the configuration at this side and then follow a similar process for the AWS side. So select this domain only and then click on Next. It's going to be forest-wide authentication. Select that and click on Next, and then we'll need to set a trust password. Now this password is separate from any other password that you've used so far. You need to set a password and note it down, and we'll need that same password when we set up the AWS side of this relationship. Now this trust password, it needs to be manually set to be the same at both sides initially, and then periodically the password is updated automatically. But for now, pick something that you'll remember and note it down. You'll need to confirm the password in the second box and then click on Next. Next again, Next again. Don't confirm the outgoing trust, so pick the No option, Next again, and then again, No to confirm the incoming trust and click on Next again. And once you've done that, finalize the process by clicking on Finish. So that's the on-premises side of this completed, so go ahead and click on OK, and now we're going to configure the AWS side. So a two-way trust, as the name suggests, is two-way. You need to configure both sides of the trust. So we're going to do that from the AWS console, so move back to the console, go to Directory Service. If you're not already within the configuration for directory, then just click on Directories and then select the directory ID that matches the one that we're configuring. Scroll down and it's under the Networking and Security tab that we can configure trust relationships. So click on that tab, click on Add Trust Relationship, and then select Forest Trust. Under Existing or New Remote Domain, we need to enter the full DNS name for the on-premises Active Directory, which is ad.animalsforlife.org. We need to enter the trust password, that's the password that you just set. It's going to be a two-way trust, so check the box next to two-way. And then we need to configure a conditional forwarder. This is the same process that we manually configured on the on-premises side, only now we're doing it from the UI of the directory service. So we need to configure it so that AWS knows how to reach ad.animalsforlife.org, which is the on-premises domain. So we need to provide the two IP addresses of domain controller 1 and domain controller 2. So that's DC1 and DC2 within AWS. Now these instances have static IP addresses, and if you followed all of the defaults, then DC1 should be using 192.168.10.100, and DC2 should be using 192.168.11.100. So we need to enter both of those IP addresses. So copy down the private IP address of DC1, so 192.168.10.100, enter that into this box, add another IP address, and then it's the private IP address of DC2, which should be 192.168.11.100. So copy that into your clipboard, paste that in, so now you've got two different IP addresses, 10.100 and 11.100, and then click on Add. And this will begin the process of configuring the AWS side of the trust. Now this process can take a short amount of time. I've had it take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, but we need to wait for it to complete. So go ahead, pause the video and wait for the state of this to change, and then we're good to continue. After a few more minutes and refreshes, the status should change to verified, and that means that the two-way forest trust is in place and active. Now that means that instead of these two implementations of Active Directory being separate and isolated, it now means that we have a level of integration configured between the two. It means that we can add users from one domain into groups of another, and that's the first step that you might go through in the real world if you're integrating an AWS domain and an on-premises domain, or you're wanting to perform a gradual migration between these two environments or configure ongoing coexistence. So to illustrate why this is so useful, let's move over to the AWS Jumpbox. So now we're on the AWS Jumpbox, and we can see that by the fact that it says aws.animalsforlife.org. Now at this point, the only identities which can log in to this Active Directory domain are identities within this Active Directory domain, so identities within the AWS Active Directory. Now if we look at the AWS Delegated Groups organizational unit and just expand this name field, you'll see that we've got lots of AWS side Active Directory groups, and one of these is AWS Delegated Administrators. Now there are lots of different groups, and you can create your own groups within the AWS managed Active Directory. Now within this scenario, because we're trying to migrate resources between domains and to integrate these two domains, we're going to configure this so that admins of the on-premises Active Directory domain are also administrators of the AWS Managed Active Directory domain. And to do that, we need to open the AWS Delegated Administrators Active Directory group. So double click on that to open, and then click on the Members tab. Now we're going to add an additional member to this group. We're going to add the admin user of the on-premises Active Directory to this group. Now to do that, click on Add, and then click on Locations. And rather than using the AWS Active Directory, we're going to select the on-premises Active Directory that we can see here now because we've got the two-way trust. So select this and click on OK. And then into this box, type admin and click on Check Names. Now this will locate any matching users inside the on-premises domain. We can see here ad.animalsforlife.org/users. So we know that these are in the on-premises domain. So select the item that has admin under logon name. So this is the admin user that we've created. Select that, click on OK. Click on OK again. And notice there that we've now got the on-premises admin user within this group at the AWS side. That's good, so click on OK. And at this point, the on-premises admin user, because it's a member of the AWS Delegated Administrators group, now has admin privileges over the AWS side domain, so aws.animalsforlife.org. And that's really powerful because it means we can now log in to the AWS Jumpbox with the admin user of the on-premises domain. So let's try that. Go ahead and click on the Start button, and then click on the user icon at the top, and click on Sign Out. And that will sign us out of the AWS Jumpbox as the AWS administrator. Now I want to connect back into the AWS Jumpbox so you can get the DNS name to use from the EC2 console. Make sure you connect to Jumpbox-AWS. And this time, even though we're logging into the AWS Jumpbox, we're going to use the on-premises admin user. So type admin at ad.animalsforlife.org. So this is the on-premises admin user. Enter the password that you set right at the beginning, and then connect to the AWS Jumpbox. And just to confirm this, we're now connecting to a resource of the AWS domain using a user of the on-premises domain, a user that has admin privileges over the domain. And this has been possible because we've set up this two-way trust between the AWS side and the on-premises side. We can test this by clicking on the Windows button, going to Windows Administrative Tools, opening Active Directory Users and Computers. We're definitely connected to aws.animalsforlife.org, and even though we're logged in as an on-premises Active Directory user, we have full admin permissions on the AWS side Active Directory. Now at this point, you've successfully configured the two-way forest trust between on-premises and AWS, and that's all of the tasks that you need to do in stage 4 of this demo series. In the next stage, we're going to start migrating services from the on-premises environment through to AWS, but at this point, you can go ahead, complete this lesson, and when you're ready, I'll look forward to you joining me in the next.